it's just a very casual kind of hangout session, but it's going to be encoded with a lot of wealth codes, whether I'm sure you can pick up on some of them. And I will also directly just mention like these are particular wealth codes. Okay. So for me, I'm in my bathrobe right now and it's like a Wednesday for me. And on this particular masterclass, I've just decided to be in my bathrobe and I had just taken a shower and then I had a call and then I didn't bother to change. I was like, you know what, right now I just feel like I'm just gonna stay in my bathrobe. Like that wasn't necessarily planned or like intended at the beginning. I was like, oh, okay, what I'm gonna wear today. But then it just so happened that I'm like, you know what, I'm just feeling like I'm just gonna stay in my bathrobe. And that's part of wealth to me, to be able to choose how you spend your days and choose how you get to dress and how you get to feel and how you get to show up. If you obviously are going to, and in my early 20s, I did several different types of occupations, whether it was administrative work or going to reception or working in like an office or something, or even I think I did waitressing for like one day, like that did not work out for me. And there was also, I worked in a as in a bakery at one point as well. And that was probably my favorite uniform, the baker's outfit. That was the most fun. But a lot of like these occupations, or even if like you have to dress up a certain way, and I just always felt like very, like it just didn't feel like that was one of the things that I didn't like about an occupation, that I would have to dress up a certain way or that it just didn't feel like me and like my natural expression of myself. I'm a very artistic, creative person. So something like, okay, I'm wearing a bathrobe, but I've also decided to put like a necklace of pearls on because I like to feel a little bit dressy, I like that paradox. I like that contradiction almost. I like that sense of play and creativity and like that things are not just this or that. And I've also got like my heart-shaped earrings on. And these heart-shaped earrings, it just gives me like positive emotions because it reminds me of like 2017. Had just finished like 17 months of around the world travels. And then I was in Montreal and there was an outdoor market. And then I happened to pass by these like handmade artisan type of, they're made from clay. And I was like, oh, I just love them. So I just got them and I still have them and I'm wearing them right now. So it's like, and this necklace is like from when I was still in university, and in these like freshwater pearl necklaces I got for like Christmas one year. So, and then this bathrobe I actually just got when I was in Florida in November. So it's like everything that I have. And actually this lip balm that I was just putting on is from Taiwan when I was just there in October. So for me, it's like everything has like a story. Everything has like a memory of like, oh wow, I was there, and then in this. So it's not just about the thing for me. It's like I'm not just shopping out of like, oh, I just want something. It's like a lot of these are very even spontaneous, or they were just like, oh wow, and they kind of just showed up, right? and it's like I just have a collection that reflects the kind of I'm like a global, I love things that are like globally related. It's like when I can be like, oh, and then I was in this place and I was in that place and I got this while I was there. So it's linked to a positive memory and it's linked to something that inherently feels like me. Because also, the travel, I've been this past decade, I've been basically just traveling like a solo traveler. And this is an example of wealth code where you are not necessarily trying to be or do anything. It's like things just show up and synchronize and synergize when you simply are. So the fact that I get to just be here on like a Wednesday and things that I just surrounded by things that I love, right? Okay. Things that, like, for example, even this couch, like I have the remembrance of like when I first got this couch. This was like in 2022. And it was just like this serendipitous moment where I was kind of like not really looking for anything, but then I happened to walk into this furniture store, like not trying to, yeah, I don't know about you, but whenever you're like necessarily like I have to get these things done, it suddenly feels like work or like a chore. But when you're kind of just allowing yourself to be in that magic and that flow, and maybe there's something that you're like, yeah, I could, you know, that would be nice to have. And you might very well have it written down somewhere, but you're not intentionally going that day to be like, oh, I've got to complete this errand. That's when things just kind of show up, like you're following your intuition. That's actually what happened with this couch. I was like, I have a feeling like I just feel pulled to go to this particular store right now on this particular day at this particular time. And so I did. And then when I walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, that couch. And it was on sale, actually. It was freaking on sale. And I was like, so I got it like right there and there. And I was like, I just walked in at the perfect time. And I found the perfect couch. It's like exactly, my aesthetic and like the kind of um the material, the texture, the quality of it, just how it fits in the space. I just love it. It was like I couldn't have tried to search for a couch and been like trying to look through everything and sorting, and then I should go here or there, or even if you're shopping online to be like almost like the outside in, right? You haven't necessarily been inspired from within to just, that's the synchronicity I'm talking about. So it's like I wasn't actively looking for the couch, although in my mind I was like, if I do find a couch or something. So a lot of this is that inside out approach where I allow my inner world to guide me in the outer world more so than I allow the outer world to guide me, my inner world, if that makes sense. So this would make sense that why I would never necessarily feel like I would want to fit into an occupation, because when I was going to university, it was kind of like, okay, choose from this list of faculties available. And then, if you ever looked at like job listings or occupations or like what people are looking for, and I don't know about you, but that just gives me such a feeling of dis-ease. Like I don't feel settled in that, right? And that also speaks to like different personality types. I know I'm the kind of personality that I like to, yeah, I'm very much someone who has to feel like it's coming from within me. I don't like the outside in approach where I'm having to fit myself into certain roles for certain things. And I would say one of the greatest sources of wealth is your creativity. It's your ability to play, to imagine, to simply just be a kid and to have that wonder and that awe and that joy. And I'm 38, and that is still very much a very big piece of my lifestyle. I still feel like I'm very much a big kid at heart. It's like a Wednesday afternoon and I'm just here lounging at home in my bathrobe. And this is also connected to a bigger picture. So when I talk about spiritual wealth, it's not just like a feeling of, oh, each day is kind of just a day. I have this very cohesive view of life that it all converges. Like there's an apex, like there's a convergence where all of it, there's like a cohesiveness to it. So it's not just a day. It's not just me just happening to be on this December 17th, a Wednesday, in my bathrobe. It's like a bigger story. It's like a bigger journey. It's like a story in a bigger picture. And I go back to Serefair, which was my like this higher ego identity I really leaned into around 2015. And Serefair is the amalgamation of Serena Fairy Castle. It was like this alter ego character that's like, feels like it matched me more than like, say, my official name, Sarah, and then my surname, whatever. Serena Fairy Castle feels like light. It feels like fun. It feels like magical. It feels like someone who exists outside of the ordinary, more in the sense of like magic is possible and the transcendence of the ordinary, and that feeling of like you're more of a soul in a human body than you are just a human body, and all that pragmatic, practical stuff that sometimes can feel very dreary or just mundane and tedious. And I was like, this is like an energetic match for me. And that's what I felt very strongly. I'm like, I'm Serena Fairy Castle because it has like this flow and a feeling of like, I'm very energetically attuned. So for me, energy is more important than things that are like superficial things and things that are just very logical and practical. And very, very attuned to energy. So it's like, even if I'm picking up a piece of clothing, it's not just like, oh, does it look nice? Does it feel like, it's also more just like, it's like a resonance, like an energetic resonance for me. So the name Serena Fairy Castle, it has like this sense of possibility, this sense of there's more to life than just what's on the surface. And that's why I really gravitated to that name. And I just started internally being like, my name is Serena Fairy Castle, because Sarah, it just felt too like of the world. It feels like too of the common type of, the thing that, if your government is like a government official documents and that type of a name, right? It's just very like not like down to earth. I like being down to earth, but it's like that quality that I wasn't necessarily, it didn't feel chosen or aligned for me. So I'm like, I'm Serena Fairy Castle. And this was like a match for my identity. And so when I actually was just on the cusp of going on my round the world travels that began in 2016, but really it began in 2015. And I had this like this download come to me. I'm like, let the story write itself. It's like this idea that like I'm not controlling anything. Stop like trying to control things, like surrender a little bit. Don't think that you already know it all because you don't. It's like there's what you don't know, what you don't know. So it's like this idea of just playing like in this idea of surrender. It's like going to a higher state of consciousness where you're led. Like I always imagine like you're a puppet. Like there's a higher like a vertical alignment, where there's something, if you know about like the chakra systems, but then if you take it beyond, like beyond the crown chakra, so you're like, you're connected with your third eye, you can like receive intuitive downloads. I'm very intuitive, by the way. And so what if you were just like a puppet that you just kind of allowed that divine puppeteer, the puppet master, to kind of just like guide you and create your, move you as it would. I talk a lot about the divine symphony, your instrument, and what your particular instrument is, and the music that you play being part of the larger whole, and to just play your specific part because that's your contribution, right? And if you were just so like obedient to that without getting in your own way or your own human thoughts wanting to interfere, and then this goes back to the Wu Wei and the Tao teachings, right? Where it's this principle of everything in nature blooms and unfolds and has its own divine timing that you don't necessarily rush or that you try to control per se. So it's just this convergence of all these principles that I love and integrate within my way of being, that it's like, how obedient can you get with like that puppet master kind of thing, where you just allow your human self to be almost like the avatar in a game in like the metaphysical world. So that's what Serena Fairy Castle is, and that's what Serefair is really founded on. It's that principle of surrender, of obedience, of let go, let God, and not even in a religious sense, more in a get out of your own way. Stop trying to think that you're the one making things happen, as you allow a bigger picture to unfold. And that is like actually one of the most reassuring pieces of a piece of it, a thought, kind of like just the way that I tend to perceive life. That was like one of the greatest weights off your shoulder, because you feel like, in university, I always felt like, oh, I have to get this done, get that done, do this and do that. You just become like such a doer, essentially, that you feel like, oh, I'm so smart. I'm in university. I'm like achieving all this. I'm doing all this. And there's this false sense of like, I'd say it's like a false sense of not just security, but a false sense of self, because I never felt very attached to that self. And that's why I always felt very distressed, because I always knew myself to be connected to like a more certain, a more true type of power that went beyond, went deeper than like the effort expended towards certain things from the human level, right? And it really went beyond that into like, and that's where some years after graduating university, I almost like was really seeking to reconnect with that part of myself that was always present there. And now it was more amalgamated in the form of Serena Fairy Castle and then Serefair. And that became my first IG account in 2016 when I was on the beaches of Malaga in Spain, how I had gotten there with like a one-way plane and then a one-way train. And, it's just like this sense of these series of events unfolding without necessarily me having necessarily a hand in it. Like I was just showing up. It was almost like this written in the stars moment where things were just kind of like, and then this happened, and then one event leads to another and another, and it just feels like so divinely orchestrated. And yeah, I didn't do anything, right? When I took the one-way train because of that inner voice that told me go to Toronto. And I went from Vancouver to Toronto on that 4-day train ride. And I just packed up all my stuff and I just went into the unknown. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know that was going to unfold into 17 months of solo travel. And then, when I'm in Toronto, I get the next clue, go to Spain. And then I do that. And then I fly into Barcelona. And then I get the next clue. And then I take a train to the Andalusian coast. And the next thing I know, I'm on the beaches of Malaga. And then I'm there for like 2 months. And then from there, I get the next clue, take the ferry to Morocco. I do that. And then I'm in Morocco for a month, and on and on and on. And this is the journey almost just unfolding. It was very much like a game, like this Marco Polo trail of clues that just led me on this round the world adventure and led me like home to who I really was, to who I really am, a wanderer, a philosopher, like someone who just wants to appreciate the art of being alive. I've never actually wanted to do anything in particular. I've always felt like, and sometimes I shame myself for that, right? Shouldn't I be more like wanting to, what do you call it, like ambitious in a sense? Not that I'm not ambitious. Like if you've seen my YouTube channel is literally the billionaire monk. So, I mean, there's actually another story for that about how the idea of billionaire, because that was only came about in like 21 to 2023, that suddenly this new emergence of like this billionaire, right? Because when I was in university, to me, millionaire felt like a very big amount. And that has quickly like now it's like when I think of billionaire, I mean, that'll have to be another video because I have a whole story on how that came about and what even is like the how that came to be, right? And a lot of times I don't necessarily think a very linear or methodical way. And it's not even necessarily for any particular pragmatic or practical purpose. It's just this sense of play and fun. And like, I always say, like, I'm like a big kid at heart. Like, I'm 38, and it's like, I don't have kids. I'm not married. I'm not like an adult by any sense of the world. I don't even necessarily go to like a job per se. And here I am. It's like I've traveled 60 countries solo. I get to be in my bathrobe just on a freaking Wednesday afternoon. And here I am, like doing these master classes now on YouTube, right? Which also converges with like this new pathway that has evolved where Serefair, actually on November 2nd, I got this download from like Serefair becomes the Serefair Conservatory. It's like I've traveled for over a decade now solo as her, as like the girl who was just like on the cusp of learning to trust herself and go on that journey of surrender and self-leadership and something beyond what her logical mind could grasp at the time. And that was way back in 2015, 2016. And I've since just become that person. I've just become her that it's like second nature to me now. And at 38, I'm like, you know what? It's almost like there's more growth because I've lived that journey. But what is like, it doesn't feel so activating for me anymore as it once did. There's not that sense of necessarily that wonder, I would say it was like the first 3 months that when I first took that train ride, and then the first 3 months from that period on it was like the steepest learning curve. That's really where that new identity solidified. It was not the whole decade. It was just that first 3 months. And then since I've just been kind of like coasting or just living that out and being that character essentially. And now it's almost like 2025, interestingly enough, like a decade since, like there's something that's emerging now. It's like moving into the role of director, founder, someone who can hold a business kind of thing, like a channel and pathway that others can lead others through their own transformation journey, the way that I led I led myself through mine, essentially through the solo travels and that self-trust. And it's still like nebulous. It's still kind of like in the ethers, and it's like that leaning into it. It's like feeling into it, right? It's like when I was becoming Serena Fairy Castle and that name was emerging, and I was like feeling more into that. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm more Serena Fairy Castle than just like Sarah and just like the student, the university, and then trying to fit into occupation and just going through the daily motions of life. I was feeling more into like the Serena Fairy Castle and like the abundance and the possibility and the joy and the wonder and the global expansion and the feeling of being untethered to any particular location or thing or attachments, right? Almost just like freeing myself from all of the conditions of life and what I felt was really draining me and kind of anchoring me and like made me feel like I was wading through molasses just in day-to-day life. And now it's almost like this sense of like, I actually kind of want more structure because I have like all this free-spirited energy, and that's very much a big part of who I am. But I also did a decade of classical piano music from 5 to 15. And I'm sharing a lot of my story here and just like the aspects of my life and journey, because there's a lot of codes embedded in this. You know, if you're picking up on some of them, it's like the idea that the whole journey, as I'm saying, that this is all a bigger picture. There's all like a cohesion. There's a certain apex and a certain, you know, it's not just like unrelated, like random things. It's almost like when you see the cohesion of your entire journey, it's like you realize a lot of this is like it's written in your soul, it's written in your path. It's almost like this sense of destiny. It's almost this sense of like this is you playing your own music. It's you playing your instrument that you only you can play because you are the one of one. No one else can play your particular music. No one else can play your particular instrument or the specific part that you are here to play. And so when I think about all these different elements and how all these different parts of my life kind of come together, and it's like in this moment, this present day, December 17th, 2025, here I am sitting on my bathroom, just with my pearl necklace and totally not like planned. Although this master classes that I've been doing weekly just started like at the start of December, right? This was just like a very new thing that I was like, you know, I feel like I want to do weekly master classes. And I just set that as like, I just booked that in. Like I just literally booked that in. I'm like, I'm just going to do it regardless of whether I know what I'm necessarily going to be talking about. I'm going to give myself a container, a particular, you know, I've been like travel Tuesdays and then holistic wealth Wednesdays. And so it gives me like this kind of like a pillar, like a container, a structure to play in and to kind of be free within, but there's still a container. I set a specific time on every week. At least I've continued this for 3 weeks now. And then I deliver, and then I show up here, and then I share what is on my heart for that day. And it is in line with, well, today's masterclass is really in line with the holistic wealth codes, which, if you're picking up on any of them, it's about this idea of being outside of the box, because that was really what I felt my soul pulling me to. And so I said about the decade of playing classical piano. And, you know, I still play piano here and there, but it's like I don't always necessarily have a piano with me, especially if I'm like traveling or abroad or whatnot. I don't take lessons anymore and such, but I've always felt very like that's a core piece of who I am as well. The classical piano, that specific instrument and the specific style of piano, right? I don't necessarily feel drawn to necessarily playing other instruments, if you will, nor and classical piano has always been to me my favorite. Just like that rigor and like that almost like complexity of the music and the technical elements. Like I like that strictness. I like things that are kind of strict in that regard, right? And I also kind of really enjoyed like the very specific structure. Like, you know, classical music, it's almost like it's not necessarily as creative as say if you're just doing like a pop song. There's more improvise vision improvision. How do you say that word now? Improvisation, improv. It's more improvisation. How do I not know how to say that word? It's less improv improvision improv. For some reason I've just forgotten how to say the word improvisation. Anyways, So classical music is more like contained in that, if you will. So when I combine like Serefair, which is like that decade of where I just kind of was this free spirit, and I leaned more into that, like, getting out of the mindset where I was still like going through university and then trying to fit into occupation and the rules of all of that, and almost like the rigidity in some sense of, being in an occupation or in a university setting and whatnot. Going off my solo travels and like into the unknown and like just being like, have no clue where this is going. The journey is just unfolding and I'm allowing to. It's like I really got into like that hippie kind of like, let's just see what happens kind of thing. And like this trust and surrender and doing things that felt outside of the norm for me, but also felt about quite normal. So it was that interesting. It was like it feels like unfamiliar while also feeling very familiar. So I think that's like the sweet spot when you know that, there's something there in your soul because it feels like there's like this buzz within, there's like this feeling of like, ooh, energy. And yet there's also this deep calm and rest. Like during the decade of solo travel, I did not have that feeling of dissonance, of like that distress, that soul level division, if you will, that feeling of like not being my own person, of being a ghost in my own body, of being there but not really there. Like I wasn't really present, it's like my mind was always like off elsewhere. And so that's almost like what needed to sync up, just like me and my soul essentially. So the decade of solo world travels was me being like in the unfamiliar while also having that very deep sense of peace and ease within myself. It's like, it's like relief. It's like a sigh of relief. And like, I can just be who I am now. So that is actually what that meant to me more than anything else. It's just that feeling like I've finally just come home to myself. I'm not trying to be anyone that I'm not. And it just so happens that, you know, whatever way or shape that looks like is your particular instrument to live and to allow to come through. And so when I talk about like the spiritual cohesion, like having that larger picture alignment so that your days don't just feel like scattered, they feel like they're cohesive in some way. And this is a big part of wealth for me because a lot of, when you don't feel like you have a bigger picture, who was it that said it was like someone's like putting brick by brick, but they don't see themselves as just putting the bricks. It's like they see themselves as building like a cathedral. You know what I'm talking about? But it's kind of like along those lines, but it's more so that I feel very, very connected to like a divine self, like the divine symphony, meaning that because I'm allowing myself to simply be pulled by soul and what I feel called to do in any given time without rhyme or reason in many cases, without necessarily having an ultimatum or a specific outcome in mind, or just like it's more like I'm in intrinsic desire. This is also one of the wealth codes, especially what I in 2015 I was distinguishing more and more between extrinsic desire, extrinsic motivation, and intrinsic motivation, where extrinsic motivation is kind of thing, well, I'm going to complete this degree so that it's like an if then, right? It's like this outcome based, like, okay, if A, then B, like this conditional thing. So you're doing something as a means to an end rather than the intrinsic motivation that would imply that it is actually part of your soul path and your soul pull and longing, right? So I started differentiating between that and recognizing that that was the pattern that would often get me into the moments where I felt in dissonance with myself. If I was ever acting as a means to an end, like, okay, I'm doing this for this, it's a conditional, it's that sense of extrinsic motivation. So you're not necessarily doing the thing because you inherently enjoy it, you're doing it because you think it will get you something at the end. And I started to realize, so that's one of the reasons why I packed up my life and I went on that one-way train journey, is because I'm like, the intrinsic motivation right now is to go on that one-way train journey. It's the wonder, it's the possibility, it's the awe, it's the magic, it's the joy. It was that intrinsic pull, and it was like something about this is just lighting me up I'm feeling myself come alive right now. I'm feeling myself in this buzzing, like energetic state of like excitement and anticipation and eagerness, and like all the juice and deliciousness of life is just like flowing in. And then the alternative was like, okay, well, I continue doing what I'm doing. I just kind of go through the humdrum of everyday life. And, I'm living in my dream city at the time, Vancouver, the city I've been going to as a child, but it's not my hometown in Canada, but it's like one that I'm already very, very familiar with. And now I'm like just living there in my 20s. And I'm like in the heart of downtown. And obviously it's like just by the ocean and the beach. And then there's the mountains. And obviously it's just, I'm like in a high rise, your 20s, you're like, yeah, I'm just living the life. And then I'm like enrolled in this life coaching program. And then I have like some employment on as well. And then I just like some activities. I think I was like dropping into like some various events around town, just trying to like have some hobbies and whatnot. And then, just like normal everyday stuff, right? But for some reason, something about it just felt so contrived to me. It felt like I was trying to be someone, or I was just trying to do things, like scattered things, right? Things like here and there, but they didn't necessarily just have this elegant synchronicity, like this sense of like flow and ease and almost like a natural unfolding. And it was like the real difference was the extrinsic motivation. It was like, how did I even get to this point? It was this idea that yes, a lot of things I had started choosing more for just for myself. Yes, I want to just enroll in this life coaching program for myself. Yes, I decided to move to Vancouver, and I decided I want to stay in the heart of downtown and close to like the beaches and all that. And then on like the weekends, I would go hiking on like a grouse mountain and stuff like that. So it was like, yes, I was doing these things from an inherent place of joy, but there was still a sense of like, there's still something missing. And so when I got that call, like, go to Toronto, that non-logical voice that wasn't attached to anything didn't make any sense, right? Because a lot of these activities, they still have a certain underlying, well, this, then that. I take this life coaching program, it will make me feel more fulfilled. It will make me feel more accomplished. It will make me feel more professional, or maybe more, what do you call it? Capable, like I'm qualified now or something. If I, you know, I was still like in some employment, obviously. It wasn't necessarily like my dream employment. It was more like some admin stuff, and like you go to like an office and you do like some work in an office and computer work essentially. And then I was like, that's not exactly my dream. That is not exactly something I just do for fun. It was definitely very much just for like, okay, well, I get like a paycheck from doing this. And while it was like tolerable, like I could try to find some enjoyment in it, it wasn't exactly something I was doing for intrinsic purposes. And then another thing was like, even though just kind of like signing up for various events and like maybe just trying to, widen my network or just like whatever my activities, and, just kind of, I'm always like wanting to learn new things or just like expand my, I don't like just doing the same thing. So I was always just like joining different hobbies or events in the city and whatnot and here and there. So like my days were very full and such, but it also felt like I was just kind of doing things, not necessarily always from inspiration, but just kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, there's always like an underlying sense of doing something as a means to an end. And so when I got the call, go to Toronto, that was like one of those things that was like purely intrinsic because I came from nowhere near my logical mind. In fact, my logical mind was resisting, and I'm like, I have no reason to go there. I have no clue why I would go there. I don't even want to go there, in fact. So there was like my mind. It did not come from my mind. So that's how I knew for sure that was not an extrinsic motivation. I was like, okay, well, this is interesting now because it's the same voice at 17 that whispered to me, go travel. Very pure, very like unsullied, just go travel. It's like the most direct form of communication from your intuition. And so when I just chose that, it was almost like stepped into this vortex of simply just, you don't have to do anything for a particular end. Like the thing itself is the end in itself. Like when I boarded that train, I was like, I did it. Got on the train. I did it. I fulfilled that intrinsic. I have no clue why I feel drawn to this, but I just do it. I'm just going to do it then. Even though my mind has no logical reason or feels like it's just, sense of just complete like, what is going on here, right? My mind was just like, in a way, freaking out, like, what is happening? Whereas like my inner soul was like, yes, yes. Like this is like the intrinsic fulfillment. When you live from that place of intrinsic fulfillment, it's like your whole life operates from a different level, from the level of ease, from the level of wu wei, essentially, from simply allowing your soul to be written as a storyline. And this is where I had that enormous sense of relief, this surrender, this idea that it's not on me to make things happen. I simply allow myself, allow life to kind of unfold. It's almost like you just allow yourself to be a flower, a blade of grass. You know, how do these things know how to just be, right? They're not doing anything particular, and yet just there they are. When I just allow myself to do that, that's where a lot, like that's basically how my travels unfolded. And then new way of life, right? And then now, fast forward December 17th, 2025, here I am just doing this holistic wealth Wednesday in my bathrobe as I'm just like surrounded by some of my favorite things, right? Like I mentioned, every part, like even the products they use, this is part of the physical wealth now, right? Where you're so much more attuned to the things that actually light you up and that actually are coming from your soul. It's like I'm not making myself put on a particular outfit or just show up a certain way for this masterclass. I'm just simply like, you know what? Bathrobe it is today. This is just the vibe. This is just what I'm being called to right now. This is just in alignment with my soul. And I feel an enormous sense of peace and ease and rest, like from just not trying to do anything in particular, but just allowing things to happen, like getting out of your own way. And, you know, the whole like this year, it's like right now it's December, and I give myself so much space and like presence and just the, you know, it's not even about day to day, it's like the month to month, or even just like the seasonal flow, the ebb and flow of life, where it's like this particular season, especially December, I love just being cozy at home and being able to just focus on more inward and more of like my inner creativity, because I have such like a rich inner landscape. I have a very active imagination, if you will, and like I love just feeling cozy at home, especially, and like having all the hot chocolate and the apple ciders and the goodies and stuff. Like I love this time of year where I get to simply just almost like hibernate. And it's like winter. I'm in Canada. So it's like this is I love being home at this time of the year where I can experience like the winter and that sense of hibernation. You know, it's just like a sense of biology where I feel like that ebb and that flow and that seasonal distinction, it just suits me very well. and and it's like just last month I was in Florida, so I was a lot more like outward focused and out and about, and obviously Florida is like a totally different climate. So there's that sense of like, this isn't just the whole year, this isn't just every day, this is like a very curated, like specific moment in time, and this season where I get to just be this way, and it fulfills so many parts of myself, because it's like the holistic wealth pillars again. It's the idea that there's parts of me that like to just be cozy at home and inoculate and be in hibernation and have all the, you know, be a homebody essentially and just enjoy all of the festivities of the season, and, you know, catch up with like, you know, maybe reading books I'm interested in and organizing some things and wrapping things up for the year end. But it's also not the same, because this is the first year that I'm doing like the weekly master classes and showing up on these Travel Tuesday and Holistic Wealth Wednesdays, like these containers that I've set up for myself, which is also fulfilling another part of myself that's wanting to emerge more. Say the, you know, whatever it is, showing up and like sharing and speaking, and then, but then prior to that, I was like also traveling. So in other parts of this year in different seasons, you know, in January, I was like in Colombia. And then in February, it was Lunar New Year. And then I was in Southeast Asia for a big part of it. For a couple of months, I was in China and I was in Hong Kong. And then I was in just Florida recently. And I was back home in Canada in October. So it's like every month and every season is just like a different a different theme almost. And it's like, I don't plan it. Like I don't necessarily plan my year in advance. And yet everything kind of just unfolds in its own way, in its own magical way. That such, I'm now here, sitting here on a December 17th, 2025, on this masterclass, you know, dressed as I am, or whatever this day happens to be. And there's something so perfect and magical about it, because it's like, if you think about the congruence of how all these events came to be, and how you, whatever you happen to be doing right now, whatever I happen to be doing right now, it's not just any one thing, right? And this is where the bigger picture comes in, this sense of surrender. It's like, I didn't plan any of this. Like I didn't really be like, I got to do this masterclass for this and this. It was like, this very much like just a soul calling. Like it was this intrinsic desire that I'm like, you know what, I just want to show up on camera more, and I want to speak more, and I want to share more and talk about topics that I just like to talk about, especially in this season. And so it's like, within this container, here I am on this Zoom call that I'm now uploading to my YouTube, that I kind of set up for myself. It's like, yes, I did the action. I took the action, but at the same time, the idea came from like an intrinsic motivation. It came like more spontaneously. It's like, I'm just doing weekly masterclass, and I just started in like the beginning of December. And that I felt like that I feel quite comfortable just like in my bathrobe. Like I'm not trying to be anyone that I'm not, right? I'm not trying to show up a certain way. I'm not trying to be like, oh, to look professional, you must do this. Because like that's the point of why I wouldn't fit into an occupation, because I don't want to have to be someone that I'm not, if that makes sense. I don't want to have to do things that I don't feel intrinsically drawn to. And that's a big part of the freedom piece for me, right? It's that ability to choose how you spend your days. It's the ability to choose how you get to be when you show up. Even, oh, I didn't even get to it, but a lot of my travels, there's so many different ways to travel. And a big way of the major, like the way that I've tended to travel, especially for the like whole bunch of solo travels now, is very much the same, similar, in alignment with my whole personality and like the whole Serena Fairy Castle vibe, right? It's very like whimsical, let the trail kind of unfold itself, like the Marco Polo game unfolding, and the simply like going with the flow and what shows up next, and like the one-way tickets and the one-way trains and the one-way planes and the journey into the unknown. Like most of my travels, I would say, if not all, I don't plan in advance. They're very spontaneous. Like it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to go here now. Maybe I'm going to go there now. And a lot of times I just get one-way tickets. And it's not even places that I have a bucket list for per se. In fact, if there's some place that I actually think I want to go, I haven't even probably gone there yet, because I just go with the thing that actually my soul is called to, not the thing that I think that I want, right? I'm not the kind of person that's just going to book a vacation or a trip because I'm like, oh, maybe I want to go there. Like I would never really do that. That's just not how I function. Whereas it was like a lot of the things I felt pulled to, I'm like, oh, I feel like I can't not do this right now, because it's just something so um like there's an emotional charge there. There's something that's like pulling me. And another thing to that is like, because I have such a rich inner landscape and like creativity and that imagination and the play, a lot of times I'm not necessarily as outward focused like you would think when you're traveling and you're sightseeing, that you're like looking at all the things and like you're doing all the things and you're very outward focused. I solo travel. I think that says a lot about my specific travel style, that I'm very much like in my own head a lot of times. And even if I'm just like wandering through different places, I'm not necessarily looking at from the outside in. I'm looking at it from my lens, from my point of view. Like I'm Serena Fairy Castle, and I'm like in this magical journey, and I'm wandering around, and things take on like a magical surrealism for me, right? And I'm drawn to the things that I'm drawn to, and I'm not going on like, I'm not doing things that feel like they're coming from the outside in. And a lot of times that is what propels the adventure and the journey for me, because that leads me to like it's like the curiosity that leads me from one thing to the next, and it all unfolds very intuitively and very naturally, like without me having to plan or create like an itinerary or something. And that's like a very different travel style than say how another person would do it, but that's also where how you do anything is how you do everything. But not to be cliche, but yeah, essentially it's like people can be doing the same thing. Like you can go traveling, but how you do it will be very unique to you. Why you do it will be unique to you. And who you are being as you're doing it will be also unique to you. And that's where it's like you lean into that self-trust and what you're actually called to on a soul level, the intrinsic desires, because that's where you get in sync with that alignment with the universe and that natural flow. You're not trying to do anything. You're not trying to make anything happen or should be a certain way. And that's where a lot of the deep inner sense of peace and connection to like a higher order comes in. That's also where a lot of the physical will rearrange itself to match who you are on the inside. And that's where you feel like a lot of things reflected on the outside are like things that you love because, oh my gosh, that's like so me. Oh my gosh, I love that. And that has a story and this relates to me in this way and this has meaning for me. And so it's almost like your life naturally becomes wealthier holistically as a result of you tuning into that intrinsic desire and path and that flow. And it's also that emotional honesty, right? That emotional honesty, like, you know what? I don't feel like putting on clothing besides just wearing this bathrobe right now. But also I was like, you know what? I feel like I want to wear something just dressing up a little bit. I put this necklace on and I'm like, oh, yes, this is perfect. And then of course I like to feel hydrated. So I've got like my lip chap right here, you know, and then I've got my heart-shaped earrings on and I decided to like pull my hair back a little bit. It's just like all these things because I do like, um, you know, I like fashion, but not necessarily in the fashion of like, well, this is also where it is, right? It's like you travel in a certain way, your fashion style is a certain way, the things that you keep in your home are a certain way. They're all unique to you. And I don't know about you, but that's all that life really means to me. It's like you get to play house. So you get to play like this character in a game, like the game of life. It's like you're like a sim character or something. Um, it's almost like what else is there to life other than to simply be who you are? It's like there's nothing to do or be other than to simply allow what is like why like allow your who you already are to simply guide you, you know. It really is that easy. There's a sense of like trust in the universe as well that it will support you, that it will show up, that it will the resources, the physical resources, like it rearranges to match who you are. And that's also part of the ease and the trust and the surrender and the connection to like a higher divinity and higher power. And it sounds so easy saying it now, obviously, having already like just this being my lifestyle for like a decade now. When, you know, if I was in university and my early 20s and even just like starting on that, embarking on that one-way train ride and that journey that unfolded, my mindset was not necessarily in this space of just, we're just in your ease and your higher divinity and connection to the flow and whatnot. It was definitely very much more tunnel vision, if you will. There's a certain tunnel vision. There's a certain sense of like, I still have to make something happen. I still have to, I'm still seeing myself this way rather than this, you know. There's a tipping point where I started seeing myself more as Serena Fairy Castle than I did as just Sarah, the human, and somehow just the student or whatever roles I was in. So I recognize that who I am is, you know, definitely steeped in this new way of being. And it didn't just happen overnight. But that really is where Life of Elegance is embodied because it's like you're not trying, you're not forcing anything. You're simply, it's like there's a certain sense of energetic ease. So I have a link for you to check out if you would like to go into 2026 in greater ease and alignment with who you really are, connect more to that divinity that you came into the world as. Like you are divinity in human form. And just start playing more with what life actually is and who you get to be in life. I promise you that 2026 can be unlike any other year that you've ever experienced. So check the link in my bio and apply if you feel called to it. So this has been Holistic Wealth Wednesday, and I will see you next week.